The habits that stole 10 years of my life didn't look toxic. They looked responsible, smart, even productive. I was praised for them, rewarded, promoted. People said things like, "You're so disciplined," and "I don't know how you do it all." And honestly, neither did I, because looking back now, those same habits were slow poison. They drained my energy, killed my creativity, and little by little made me feel like I was living someone else's life. And I didn't even realize it was happening. If you've been feeling stuck or restless lately, like you're meant for more, but just can't quite figure out why you're not moving, pay close attention, because these 3 habits are subtle. They fly under the radar, but they will steal your time, your confidence, and your potential if you let them. The first one might surprise you. It's something that society actually rewards, and yet it quietly robs many of us of our most valuable resource, our time. Let's dive in. I used to believe that being busy meant I was doing something right. If my calendar was full, if my inbox was overflowing, if I was sprinting from one thing to the next, I thought that that meant I was succeeding. And the world agreed. Everywhere I turned, people said, "You're so productive, Kim." And I wore that like a badge of honor. What no one saw was that I was quietly exhausted, not the kind of tired that sleep fixes. It's the kind that makes your soul feel jet-lagged. At one point, I was working full-time as a doctor, raising 2 little boys, renovating our house, and writing a blog at night because I had this tiny spark of a dream that maybe I could do something else with my life. And I was nailing it. Color-coded to-do lists, meal prep, inbox at 0. I was the woman people looked at and said, "I don't know how you do it all." But what they didn't see was the part of me that felt completely numb. I was efficient, but disconnected. I wasn't designing my life, I was surviving my schedule. And that's the trap. Productivity makes you feel like you're winning, even when you're actually drifting. You confuse momentum with meaning. And if you're not careful, you wake up a decade later wondering how you got so far from yourself. But here's the scary part. Society rewards this. You get promotions and praise and respect, all for being the busiest person in the room. But the truth? Busyness is not the same as progress. In fact, researchers at the University of California found that the average person is interrupted every 11 minutes at work, and it takes 23 minutes to refocus. So basically, we spend our days being distracted from distractions. The problem isn't that we are not working hard, it's that we're often working hard on the wrong things. I was saying yes to everything, every patient, every project, every opportunity to prove myself, because my identity was wrapped around being responsible. And when you build your identity around being responsible, it becomes almost impossible to slow down. It took me years to realize I wasn't being productive, I was being reactive. I wasn't designing my life, I was defending it. If you've ever caught yourself color-coding a to-do list of things that didn't actually matter, yeah, same. The truth is, busyness is seductive. It feels really good in the moment, like junk food for your ego. But at the end of the day, it leaves you drained and hungry for something more meaningful. This is habit number 1 that can steal years of your life. It's the productivity trap, mistaking busyness for progress. So here's a small shift that changed everything for me. Once a week, I started doing what I call a progress audit. I would ask one simple question: what actually moved the needle toward who I want to become? Not what I did, but what mattered. Sometimes that answer was small, like taking a walk instead of checking my email. But those tiny decisions started to rewire how I valued my time. Because here's the thing, you can always make more money. You can't make more time. If that habit quietly drained my energy, the next one drained something deeper, my confidence. And it's one that most high achievers mistake for wisdom. If you've ever found yourself stuck in your own head, replaying every possible scenario before making a move, yeah, that one's next. But before we go there, if you have been feeling like your energy and your focus need a full system reboot, I created something that might help. It's a free 5-day challenge called The Reset. Each day, I walk you through short tools to reset your energy and focus and mindset. It's the same ones that I used to break out of this exact cycle. You can grab it by clicking the link below. It is completely free and it'll help you to start reclaiming your time before another year slips by. Let's talk about habit number 2, the overthinking loop. If habit number 1 was about doing too much, habit number 2 was about thinking too much. Now, here's the thing. I used to tell myself that I was just being thorough, responsible, thoughtful, the kind of person who considered all the angles. But really, I was overanalyzing myself into paralysis. You might have heard this called analysis paralysis, and it's a master thief because it steals your creativity, your confidence, and your ability to just move. I remember when I was first thinking about leaving medicine, I had this whisper that maybe I was meant for something different. But instead of listening, I opened a Google Doc called Pros and Cons of Ruining My Life. That document was 12 pages long. And it didn't make me any clearer. It just made me tired. Here's what I've learned since. Overthinking feels productive because it gives your brain the illusion of control. But what it's really doing is feeding your fear. Psychologists have a term for this: intolerance of uncertainty, and it's strongly linked to anxiety. And the more that we try to eliminate uncertainty, the more anxious we actually become. It's a cruel little loop. We tell ourselves we're being cautious, but what we're really being is scared. And scared people don't move, they circle. For me, overthinking became a kind of armor. If I could plan enough, analyze enough, know enough, then maybe I wouldn't make a mistake. But that armor was heavy and it kept me from living the life that I actually wanted. At its core, this is an identity issue. I had built my identity around being responsible, the good girl who doesn't mess up. So anytime I wanted to take a risk, my brain would say, whoa, that's not you. And the truth is, your brain will always choose familiar misery over unfamiliar possibility. That's why change feels terrifying, even when you know it's right. So what do you do instead? You start acting before you feel ready. I use what I call the 80% rule. When something feels 80% right, I go. Because the last 20% is just fear in a clever disguise. And I have realized that clarity doesn't come from thinking. It comes from doing. Action creates data. Data creates confidence. Confidence creates momentum. So if you're caught in that mental hamster wheel right now, here's your reminder. You don't need another plan, you need a decision. And once you make that decision, your brain finally relaxes because it's no longer spinning hypothetical futures, it's executing a real one. Now, if this habit drained my confidence, the next one drained something even more personal, my sense of self-worth. Because it's the one that looked the most virtuous. It's the habit that we are taught to be proud of, and it's also the one that nearly broke me. Let's talk about habit number 3, the self-sacrifice cycle. This one might hit a little close to home, especially if you are someone who takes pride in being dependable. Because habit number 3 looked a lot like strength. I used to think I was being selfless. I was taking care of everyone else, my patients, my kids, my family, my staff, and leaving absolutely nothing for myself. And I told myself that that was noble. But what I was really doing was abandoning myself in slow motion. I'll never forget the moment that it caught up with me. A year after my second son was born, I got really sick. At first, it was just fatigue and joint pain, but within weeks, I could barely walk down the stairs. Eventually, I was diagnosed with something called Lofgren syndrome, which is a kind of inflammatory arthritis. My body had basically gone on strike. And looking back, it wasn't mysterious. I'd been running on empty for years, ignoring every signal, every symptom, every instinct. Because I had this story in my head. Real strength means pushing through. But strength isn't how much you can carry. It's knowing when to put something down. And I know a lot of people, especially women, who learned the same lie, that your worth is measured by how much you give, how much you tolerate, and how little you need. There's even research showing that women are nearly twice as likely to experience burnout as men, largely because of role overload and emotional labor. In other words, we're trying to do everything for everyone while pretending we're fine. Spoiler, we're not fine. We're just really good at faking it. For years, I thought self-care was indulgent, something that you did after you'd earned it. But the truth is, it's maintenance. It's what keeps you in the game. When I finally started taking that seriously, eating real food, sleeping, moving, saying no, not only did my health return, but so did my creativity and my joy. Because here's what I've learned. You can't pour from an empty cup, but you also can't create from an exhausted one. Trust me, I tried. Now I do something incredibly simple that changed everything. Every morning before I even touch my phone, I do what I call the 5-minute self-check. I ask, what do I need today to feel grounded and well? Sometimes it's physical, like sunlight or movement or protein. Sometimes it's emotional, like a boundary or a quiet hour alone. And sometimes it's just grace, permission to be human that day. Those tiny check-ins rebuild self-trust because they remind you your needs matter too. So those were the 3 habits that quietly stole 10 years of my life: busyness, overthinking, and self-neglect. They didn't look toxic, they looked responsible. But over time, they drained my energy, my confidence, and my sense of self. The good news, you can take all of it back. So let's talk about how. If I could go back, I wouldn't tell my younger self to work harder. I tell her to slow down, to trust her instincts, to stop performing responsibility and start living in alignment. Because the habits that stole my time weren't bad habits. They were misdirected virtues. Busyness looked like dedication. Overthinking looked like wisdom. Self-sacrifice looked like love. But all of them were slowly disconnecting me from myself. And that's the real danger. When you lose touch with who you are, you start living on autopilot. You end up chasing goals that don't fulfill you and following rules that don't belong to you. The truth is, you can't create a new life with the same identity that built the old one. That is why transformation isn't about adding more habits, it's about rebuilding from the inside out. And when you start to do that, when you redesign your inner blueprint, everything changes. You stop chasing progress and start experiencing peace. You stop overthinking and start trusting. You stop running on empty and start moving from overflow. And that's when you realize those lost 10 years weren't really wasted. They were data. They were the lesson plan for the person that you're becoming now. So which of these 3 habits has been quietly running your life? Let me know in the comments. I read every one. And if you're ready to hit the reset button, as I mentioned, I created a free 5-day challenge called The Reset. Each day, I'll walk you through short, powerful tools to help you to clear mental clutter and regain focus and reconnect with yourself. These are the same tools that I use to rebuild after burning out. You can join for free just using the link below. If this resonated with you, then the next video that I would recommend watching, and I will link this one on the next screen, is the 5-minute practice that stops you from wasting decades. It'll show you exactly how to realign your days with who you want to become. Because change doesn't start with willpower. It starts with identity. Thanks for being here, and I will see you in the next one. Ignoring every single tea break. It's good when I make these little mistakes. That actually gives me a chance to drink my tea, so I don't forget. Okay.